Hello and welcome to Beyond the Donation. I am your host, Matt Bitzegaio, and I am joined today by Madeline McCoy of the Nonprofit Solution. Madeline, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Matt. It's a great time to be here. So thanks.
Why don't you, if you don't mind, just take a moment and tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and what you do at the Nonprofit Solution.
So my journey into the nonprofit world has, like many people, it was unexpected. Started back in college. I always worked with small Catholic churches and getting involved in different arts organizations. And in my upbringing, there's always been just this ingrained altruistic desire from my parents to help others and make a difference. And that's just been something that I've grown up with. Eventually, I found myself as an executive assistant at a national nonprofit, not exactly where I thought I'd end up. And then, of course, one day, Giving Tuesday came around and they needed someone to spearhead a campaign. So I jumped in somewhat naively with a bit of enthusiasm. I Googled how to campaign and figured out there's a little bit of a method to that. There's a method to the madness. By the end of the whole 2-week campaign, we ended up raising 150,000, and that was the aha moment of, oh, okay, I might be good at this. And I got hooked. So from there, I just became a little sponge and started learning everything that I could about fundraising. I started taking courses, reading all the books, you name it. If it was out there, I was reading it, I was in it. So I grew from there into the development offices and then eventually into some different consulting firms. And then that led me to start my own firm, the Nonprofit Solution, about 3 years ago. And now from there, as CEO, I get to merge my passion for helping others with the skills of the fundraising and now in marketing and then nonprofit management. And it's been a true blessing. And I absolutely love what I do and love working with all the different people that I get to meet. So it's
Well,
been fantastic.
yeah, that sounds great, and it's interesting. We talk to a lot of consultants that kind of follow a very similar path. They start in the nonprofit space, they get ingrained in what's going on with development or whatever it is, and then are able to kind of take that and be able to help multiple organizations through that experience. So today, our theme, we're going to talk a lot about fundraising, but just really taking it down to the very base level. And I think the first question I have for you is for all of our listeners who are like early stage or they're nonprofit leaders, they're just getting started. Can you kind of share with us what you see as some of those like foundational elements that they need to be thinking about when it comes to trying to build a successful fundraising mechanism or a fundraising plan within their nonprofit?
Absolutely. And I'm really glad that you're asking me this because this is I find I get a lot of these questions on LinkedIn and I'm just super passionate about it. We help a lot of these types of organizations, those early startups, 1 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But hands down, the foundation of a successful fundraising plan and just a plan in general is clarity. Clarity, being able to clearly articulate your mission, your vision, your audience, your goals, your specific asks. Those are essential. It's essential for inspiring your donors and then aligning your fundraising activities to that as well. The other essentials that even follow after that are understanding your audience, and then what we build after that, which I find to be an essential as well, is a donor stewardship plan
Mm-hmm.
right alongside that. And we build that pretty early in as part of your brand. So when we're starting out with these startups, so to speak, a lot of times people build their brand and they think, oh, our colors and our logo, but really your brand is how you're perceived by others, how others perceive you. And some of the most important people who are going to be perceiving and interacting with you are your donors. And so you really want to make sure that your stewardship plan is locked in tight because and that's why we kind of put it right in with your brand when we're building it.
Mm-hmm.
Because how you nurture those relationships after they've given is one of those essential foundational elements. So clarity, the audience, and then that stewardship plan.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the audience piece, because I think one of the challenges, new nonprofits or young nonprofits have is even where to start. Like, how do they start to identify what that audience is? How do they start to understand it and target those potential donors? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, those that is such a hard thing. It's like, okay, I've got this great idea. Who do I talk to? And it's kind of like making new friends,
Hmm.
so you got to kind of start with people who share your interests. So if you're, if it's animal based, probably start where are those people who love animals? Where are you? Those
Hmm.
same types of people. Where are those people who are likely to support your cause? Where's your ideal donor? Who are they? What do they care about? What are they doing on the weekends? If you do happen to have people who are already supporting you, maybe you're in your second or third year, look at who's already supporting you, and
Hmm.
ask those same questions. Who are they? What do they care about? What are they doing on the weekends? Where are they shopping? Are they single? Do they have families? Where are they living? And use any tools that you have at your disposal. If you've got social media, website analytics, if you've got an email that you're sending out, and you can look at those analytics, understand who's engaging with your content that you're sending out,
Hmm.
and take a look at who those people are. Are they young professionals? Are they retirees? Are they local to you? Are they national? This helps you tailor that message, and helps you get a message that resonates more deeply with each of your donors, and gets you the ability to personalize it. The other thing is the power of networking. So joining forces with organizations, local businesses, those that align with your mission, they can introduce you to potential donors who already care about similar issues. And so once you've got a good idea of who your potential donors are, you can reach out through various channels. So the emails, the social media, community events, if you're able to do that. And then the key here is to share not just information, but also stories that can strike a chord with them. So
So,
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, I think that's a really interesting segue into, so if I'm a young nonprofit, I maybe don't have a lot of impact stories yet that I can share. So, like, what are the types of things that an earlier stage nonprofit, how do they craft a message that can resonate if they don't have a whole lot of, like, as we believe and we hear a lot about the importance of storytelling when it comes to sharing with donors what's going on. Like, what are ways to do that if you don't have a lot of things yet that you can point to as far as the impact or stories?
Sure, sure. So you don't have an impact story yet. You haven't necessarily done anything. That's not a bad thing. There's
Hmm.
actually a unique advantage to your freshness, because if you've recognized that there's an issue, chances are other people have recognized there's an issue as well, and they would feel compelled to support you. So it's all about framing that story and the potential impact of your work.
Hmm.
So as opposed to uh, telling stories that land the plane of what you've already done, you can start by telling stories of your vision. So that
Hmm.
big dream that you're chasing, what's the change that you're passionate about making? If you have that right audience that you've already figured out, they share that same passion, and they feel that same passion that you do, and you can translate it, it's infectious with them.
Hmm.
Even if you have not changed the world yet, your vision for what you're going to achieve is, with their help, is that power, is what you're going to be storytelling about. So you can share personal stories from your team, of your experiences, from people that you aim to help, or create scenarios that showcase the impact of potential donations. So the narratives don't just share a vision, but they can connect emotionally as well, making the cause relatable and also urgent.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, you know, is a good, it's a really good thing for our listeners to hear that you don't necessarily have to have already created a lot of impact, but having that vision for what you're going to do with support can help you still tell that story. I think that's really, really good.
Mhm.
We're big believers in relationship-based fundraising at DonorDoc, and I know you touched on in the foundational piece is kind of that stewardship plan of being a really important part. What are some of the strategies or approaches that you've seen be successful in kind of building relationships and nurturing those relationships right from the very beginning for a nonprofit?
Sure. So nurturing relationships with donors isn't just a part of fundraising, it is essential to fundraising. It's the heart of it. So from the moment that a donor first contributes to your cause, you have the opportunity to start building a lasting relationship. So I believe that personalized communication is a great strategy to start, that can really help with that. Acknowledging each donation with a personalized thank you as best as you can. Now, certain ones, depending on your capacity and size, you just
Yeah.
can't get to all of them at the same level. But this could be a letter, email, a phone call, depending on your abilities. But the key here really is to make it genuine and
Hmm.
express how their contribution is making a difference,
Yeah.
and that it actually is. And then personalization just goes beyond just using their name,
Yeah.
but about making the communication feel as tailored to them as
Yeah.
an individual, because they're humans. They're all
Yeah.
everybody's a human here.
Yeah.
And then engaging people beyond asking for donations. So you can use your donor doc or your CRM to put notes in and engage them beyond just their capacity, but interact with them in other ways that share with them the different updates on their projects that they've given to, invite them to different events that are not necessarily just gala related, or here's our other upcoming fundraiser, but maybe just meetings or tours or things
Hmm.
like that, input on their decisions, showing them that they're valuable partners in your
Yeah.
mission and not just ATMs. And then transparency and accountability are just super huge. Keeping them informed about how their money is being used, sharing updates, success stories, and then challenges as well. A lot of people shy away from sharing challenges, but I think transparency and sharing those challenges can just really help to build trust. And trust is a foundation of a relationship. And all of these, um, fundraising is built on these relationships.
Yeah.
So all of those strategies can really help to build on your relationships with your donors.
Yeah, I love what you said there about sharing challenges, because I think that you're right. I think that human nature is that we want to shy away from the things that we maybe feel like aren't going as well, or that we're struggling with, whether that's as an individual or as an organization. But I think in a lot of cases, sharing those challenges can actually be very motivating to donors to try and help you overcome those challenges. And so I really like that you kind of touched on that. I think that's an important thing that we don't always think about. But I agree with everything you said. I think, meaningful personalization is kind of how I would try and, phrase
Mhm.
it, where it's, you're making a connection somehow outside of just, merging their name into an email, the same email you send out
Right.
to everybody else. So that makes a lot of sense. So I think that's a good shift over to talking a little bit about platforms that can help. So, there's so many different platforms out there from that are everything from more of the front end fundraising of actually accepting donations. You've got CRMs, you've got marketing systems. I want to focus in a little bit on, more around like the actual accepting of donations. There's all sorts of different ways you can accept donations now. So mobile apps, text to give, you've got donor advised fund type things, you got crypto stuff. Like, how important do you think it is for a nonprofit to have a real diverse option set for their donors to give? Like, do you think that's a big important thing today?
I think that diversifying your donation acceptance methods is not just important, but I think it is critical for survival. I mean, think about if you were to just accept checks today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just putting it in that perspective, you would absolutely not be able to survive. So every donor has a preference for how they want to interact with the world. So some might prefer the simplicity of a text to give option, and others might prefer a written check. We still see that today, absolutely. So offering a variety of ways to donate, you can significantly widen your pool of potential donors just by giving preferences. And then more and more with younger generations, but millennials and Gen Zs, as they're entering the giving landscape, we're seeing more of these digital natives.
Yep.
They're expecting seamless solutions, and they're expecting these types of technologies to just be incorporated into their donation methods. So if it's not easy and right there from when you're asking for the donation for them to click and make it happen right then and there, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yep.
So I see mobile apps, the social media giving, crowdfunding, even crypto philanthropy. We're seeing
Mm-hmm.
that is increasing. So you can tap into these younger tech oriented audiences more effectively that way. But also just diversifying your donation methods makes it easier and more accessible for everyone. So in removing barriers, if they're logistical or psychological, just makes it easier for your donors, and that increases your donations. So yeah, I
Yep.
think it's essential.
Yeah, I do too. I think, it's just like any kind of personalization, right? It's you mentioned it. Everybody has their preferences as it relates to everything in the world, including, potentially how they donate. So I 100% agree with you there. And I think, we talk a lot about, like, it doesn't help you if this person writes a check to you every single year and you're sending them an email asking them to give online, they may not give. Whereas on the flip side, if someone expects to give online and you send them a mailer in the mail asking them to mail you a check, they may not give. So a lot of
Right.
it comes back to themes that you've kind of touched on, of understanding your donors and personalizing everything from how you're communicating to them, but also how you're asking when it is time for an ask, and giving them the opportunity to give the way it makes sense for them. So huge believer in everything that you're talking about with that. So how about just goal setting? I think that's another area where, newer nonprofits may struggle a little bit on how to set, like, where should they be? What are some realistic goals, or how do they track progress towards that? How can beginners go about setting, like, achievable fundraising goals that can actually help their organization?
Setting goals is really tricky. We like to map it out almost like you're planning a trip. You need to know where you're starting and where you want to go and what resources you have to get there. So for small organizations and those that are new to the scene, um, this process is just so crucial. So the recommendations that I usually we walk through is start by taking stock of what you have. So assess your resources, look at your current donor base, if any volunteer support, the available tools and technology that you have. So this is that starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've got that, understand your costs. So have a clear picture of what your projects and operations are going to cost, and this includes yourself and your own time. I'm looking
Sure.
at those single people teams out there
Mm-hmm.
who usually fail to include themselves in their own costs.
Mm-hmm.
So without setting the bar too high or too low, this can help you figure out what costs you actually need. Review past performance if you have done any fundraising before. This can really help you guide those expectations. But if you're brand new, I just recommend looking at benchmarks from other similar organizations. You
Mm-hmm.
can do some Googling
Yep.
and figure this out. Just helps for context. The Another recommendation is just making sure that your goals align with your mission. If your mission involves widespread community impact, your goals might have to also be pretty widespread, a little bit more ambitious. If you're focused in on a pretty niche area, that might be a consideration for your needs there.
Sure.
So the scope and scale depending there. And then I also think breaking it down. So large goals can be super overwhelming, especially when you're starting out and if you've
Mm-hmm.
never done this before. So if you're looking at $100,000 for over the course of a year and that seems really gargantuan to you, break it down month per month, break it down per event, break it down per week, per campaign. Smaller milestones are easier to manage, and that can also help with your motivation, keeping your motivation personally, and then your team's motivation. And then the last thing is engaging your team, your staff, your volunteers, board members. Bring them into the goal setting process. That way you can get their perspectives, but also it ensures, and helps out that they're committed to,
Buy-in. Yeah.
yeah, the buy-in. They're helping to work towards that same goal and those same objectives as well.
Yeah, that's really good information, I think. And, it's interesting how goal setting can be challenging. And I think especially as you're just getting started, it's where do we even start? So I think that's really good. So Madeline, if you could offer, so we've got our listeners and it's probably a broad range of different roles and so forth within the nonprofit space, but we're going to focus in today on just people that are starting or just beginning in their journey as a nonprofit leader. If you could offer them one piece of advice when it comes to creating that fundraising plan to get started, what would that piece of advice be?
If I had one piece of advice, it would be to stay connected to your mission in every aspect of your fundraising plan, because your mission is not just your why, but it's also your most important and powerful tool for engagement, for your storytelling and your success. So when it comes to your plans and your strategies, your communications, who you bring on your board, the most authentic passion for your cause, it'll help you to resonate most powerfully and profoundly with your potential donors. So stick to your mission. That's my advice.
That's great advice. For our listeners who would love to learn more about you or connect with you, what's the best way for them to find you online?
So I am online at www.thenonprofitsolution.com. So we offer consulting for small to mid-sized nonprofits, and we have lots of free resources, tools, courses on the website as well. If you'd like to find me, I'm on LinkedIn, and you can send me messages. I love trying to post relatable and somewhat educational, maybe occasionally funny posts on LinkedIn at Madeline McCoy. Nonprofit fundraising, marketing, and leadership posts most of the time. Occasionally there's a meme.
Sounds good. Well, we'll make sure to add the links to that to the show notes for those of our listeners who want to find out. Madeline, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a lot of really good information. And I think especially for those organizations who are just kind of getting started, sometimes it can be so overwhelming on what do I do next? And so I think this was some really actionable things that will help them. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge.
Thanks, Matt. It's been a blast. Thank you.
Yeah. And for all of our listeners, if you have an idea for a topic or a guest that you'd like to feature, reach out to us on social media. We'd love to hear from you. And we want to just say thank you for joining us on this episode of Beyond the Donation. We'll talk to you next time.